Hey, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of DEI After 5. It got so good last week that we had to continue the conversation with Hernan this week. And so we are going to continue to talk about what it means to reach out to multicultural markets, why it's important, and regardless of what is happening down the road, this is the work that is going to continue taking place because diversity is going to continue to happen. So check in, let me know what you think. Enjoy. When organizations are deeply invested as part of an annual campaign, or not even a campaign, this is who they are
Yeah.
as a company, as an organization. People see the missteps as a one-off
Mhm.
versus an indication of, okay, this is exactly who they are,
Yeah.
right? So I'm thinking through companies like a McDonald's who has done multicultural marketing for decades,
Mhm.
right? What probably wasn't called multicultural marketing when they started it, but they knew their audiences, they knew the markets that they were in, and they would have that representation in their commercials, in their signage. That has been going on for decades.
Yeah.
Um, and so if you have a company who is just now kind of having that aha of, okay, we need to stand 10 toes down in this, we need to be dedicated to this, where should they start?
Well, definitely they should start understanding their consumers. My experience talking with brands and doing business with them when it comes to multicultural, a lot of the time the decisions that they make on a research standpoint, they use general market research to dictate what they're going to do with multicultural, with African Americans, or with Hispanics. So they don't have the data, the research, they don't understand the consumer journey, the wants, the needs, and desires. And it starts there, understanding your consumer DNA. And then from there, develop based on those insights, then develop a multicultural strategy that is aligned with your overall marketing strategy, but your execution has to be culturally relevant. It has to appeal to the cultural nuances of these consumers. What I most of the time see with companies is, first of all, check mark, right?
Mhm.
Hispanic Heritage Month, one off, or they tend to go on translation base. So
Mm.
let's use the general market campaign, translate it into Spanish, and put it on Hispanic network, and that's it. Game over. There has been a lot of research done out there that it doesn't work. It doesn't generate the return on investment that you're looking for. It might lift a little bit your brand, but the overall engagement is not there. The return on investment is not there. Why? Because culture is more important than language at time of execution. And I always make this metaphor. It's like saying that Australians and Americans are the same because they speak English. Running a campaign from Australia here, you need to make adjustments on your message to appeal to the cultural here, the American culture. The same happens with Hispanics. Just because they were born in the U.S. and, as I said before, 67% are American, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are um, basically think and act the American way. So it's still that half and half. So understanding that the way to engage with them, understanding their who participate in that process of purchasing a product or service. These most of the time, 29% of Hispanics, they live in a multi-generational household. So the
Mhm.
younger educate the older, and the older educate the younger. Right now Hispanics, they over-index on access to the internet, on social media, even older Hispanics as well. So it's very important to understand the dynamic. Sometimes when we work with brands, they're stuck with the general market data. They have to be homeowners of X amount of money a month of household income. They need to be married, and they need to have kids, and they have to have a BA or an MBA. Well, that's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the same dynamic will apply to the Hispanic audience.
Yeah.
It's very intricate, and that's why I would say start with the research, start understanding your consumers, start seeing the similarities, and start seeing those things that they are not similar, and address them. So that's where I always like to help clients is understand where the business opportunity is with them, how to engage with consumers in a culture relevant way, and then from there help them craft the strategy and then the campaign.
Yeah.
That's
You
when
know,
you're going to see the return on investment.
so as you were talking, what that made me think about too is the nuance within the cultures, right?
Mhm.
So I think that there's this mis huge misunderstanding that the Hispanic population, and it happens within the Black population as well and other populations, are all the same,
Yeah.
right? So, as someone who has Caribbean heritage, who was born, uh, in the Caribbean, I have a very different experience than an American born Black
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
than someone who was Black in the UK and came over to the United States. There's all this nuance. And so I think about, and this came up during election time, and again, not to get political, but I think it was so important that um, some of the desires and needs of the Mexican population were very different than the Cuban population. They were
Mhm.
very different than a population that maybe have come from South America, right? But they're all considered Hispanic.
Yeah.
And so understanding that nuance, I think, is so important, because then you get to what are the desires, what are the needs, what are the wants, and how can we help better serve this particular population, and understanding also the demographics of where populations are. There's huge West Indian Caribbean populations in New York, some in the DC area. You might not have any in the Midwest. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to have a campaign there, right? So as you were talking, that's kind of where my brain was going, is it's not just understanding, oh, we need to have a campaign to meet the Hispanic population. Who, where, what, how are you going to do that? And what type of Hispanics are you talking about? Because the needs and desires may be very different.
Absolutely. And, depending on the different regions of the country, you're going to see more Mexicans, more Puerto Ricans, more Cubans. That's why sometimes in Florida, I'm based in Florida, you see an ad in Spanish that is very Mexican flavor
Mm,
catered to it. Well, that population is not strong here as the West part. So
right.
that's when you see, okay, this was a check mark. Let's do this one commercial and run it all over the United States, and let's hope and pray that it works. And that's why each region is different. Not only the type of Hispanics that live in that region, but also there might be certain differences of the way they engage with the brand. So selling a pickup truck in Texas is going to be maybe a little bit, your message has to be catered and change a little bit if you want to sell it in New York. So there are different things that people take into consideration buying a pickup truck, for example. The same with the Hispanic market. So that's why understanding the consumer's DNA, understanding the Hispanic consumers that are doing business with your brand, in what regions, who is the one that are taking the lead within the Hispanic community? Are more Mexicans, are more Puerto Ricans, are more Cubans? What are those similarities that we can address in the communication? And also, what are those differences? Because
Mhm.
who knows, maybe for one particular, for let's say in Florida, and the campaign has to be more catered to affordability. Maybe in the West Coast, affordability is not an issue. Maybe is more the service that that customer is expecting to receive and the quality of the product. So who will give you those points to be addressed and cater your message properly is the research. And that's the part that a lot of brands, it's an afterthought. They just forget about it. They just use general market data, they translate it, they run it, and hoping and praying that it's going to work. And then that's when I come on board and said, it didn't work. I spent so many millions of dollars and signed on this agreement with Network. We didn't see the return on investment. The Latino community is not interested in doing business with us. And the reality is they didn't execute it properly
Yeah.
because they didn't take the time to understand that consumer. Um,
Well,
but
I think that's also why it's important to have representation at the table,
uh-huh.
right? And so as we are looking through um a time right now where these efforts to, DEI hires and all of that. Let's take that off the table. Who who is going to be the best person to help you get to the audiences that you need to and understand the audiences that you need to reach? And you're going to have a diverse group of people at the table, or at least someone who is equipped to be able to ask the right questions. Even if they're a representative of that particular audience, they know how to think about that audience.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say think about that audience, and what probably would need to be considered in doing these campaigns. And so I think it's such an important point to make around this type of outreach is going to continue to happen, right? The growth is going to be there within this country. Becoming more and more diverse, that is not going to slow down. And so, in order to keep up, you have to be able to have that representation at the table. You have to be able to have the right audiences. And I think the misnomer that's out there is it's such a small portion of the population that we don't necessarily need those dollars. But when you look at the money, particularly within the Black community and the Latino, the Hispanic community, that's a lot of spending money. That's a lot of spending dollars,
yeah,
trillions of dollars, that can be left on the table if marketing to these communities is not seen as something that is important.
correct. Yeah, we're talking about for Latinos $3.8 trillion of purchasing power. They are also projecting they will represent 52% of new homeowners between 2010 and 2030. And as I said before, they represented 71% of the overall US population growth between 2022 and 2023. So the reality is the growth is domestic, folks. The growth
Yeah.
is not going anywhere. We have an increase. They tend to have kids and more than Caucasian consumers. And what the census has projected by 2045, Caucasian consumers will become minority. That's the reality. There's also an increase of interracial marriages as well.
Mhm.
So these are numbers that they're not going away. By 2030, they are projecting also one in every five workers, part of the workforce, will be Latino at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of numbers and statistics out there that it is alarming when sometimes I sit down with executives and they are like, well, the Hispanic community multicultural is not my priority. So what is your priority? Oh, we want to grow the brand. So how are you going to grow your brand if you're not putting the right investment where you're going to get the maximum return on investment, which is multicultural consumers? So it's again, it's an educational process. In many times, what I see with executives is it's a lot of personal bias.
Yeah.
So they make business decisions based on their own personal bias, and data now more than ever. Data doesn't lie. So you got to understand the dynamic of consumers, and especially with millennials and Gen Zs, and they're very, very different compared with me, Gen X. They're more about how you make them feel instead of owning material things. It's not about the transaction. It's about how you make them feel. It's about the experience. It's about the values as a brand you stand for. Not only that you talk, but also you make it happen. That's why when I sit down sometimes at conferences with CEOs, I like to challenge them because they talk how diverse they are and all that stuff. But then when I look at the numbers, truly the investment in multicultural consumers is less than 5% of the overall marketing budget. So it's a challenge. So I always tell clients, when they tell me I don't have the budget, I'm not asking you for more money. What I'm asking you is for budget reallocation.
Yeah.
So if you are in Texas, where Hispanics are majorities, and you're not catering to them, then you're not talking to majorities. You're talking to minorities. You are in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, where 70% of the population is Latino, and you're not doing any campaign for the Latino community, then you're not talking to majorities. You're talking to minorities. So
Mhm.
it's not about spending more. It's about budget reallocation, and it's about understanding this consumer evolution and be ready to embrace it. Because at the end of the day, many times I see that we have been in the market for a long time, so people knows who they are, and that's why I love the research to address those personal bias. You think
Yeah.
they know who they are? Okay, let me tell you what they're saying about your brand. And just because you have been in the market for a long time, it doesn't necessarily mean that they know who you are. Like you and I, we can be neighbors for 10 years and live it across the street, and we say hello every morning when we walk our dogs. But if I don't take the opportunity to invite you and say, hey, let's go have some drinks, let me get to know you as a neighbor, I cannot say I know everything about you just because we say hello. So the same applies with multicultural consumers. Just because you have been in the market for a long time, but you never cater to them, or you did, but a one-off type of approach,
Mhm.
Hispanic Heritage Month or Black History Month, doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything about them and they are truly convinced they should be doing business with your brand. So it's a big difference here. The good news is that I think there's a tremendous growth opportunities for brands that they understand where are we now, where are we going. It's not going away. It's a domestic growth, and there's a lot of revenue that they will be leaving on the table if they don't get on this wagon faster.
Yeah.
So that's the good news.
And the other part of that too is yes, this domestic growth, but we're also a global economy.
Hmm.
And it is critical
Yeah,
that we understand the markets from a global perspective,
yeah,
right? So, yes, within the United States, there's growth and there's so much diversity here, but we are quickly seeing that, a lot of the work, a lot of our customers are coming from global markets, especially as the internet continues to make people have access and reach, right? People are ordering things from all over the world. And so you have to know and understand those audiences as well, especially if you're looking for opportunities to grow into different markets. And so understand that multicultural understanding is beyond critical in order to do that.
yeah, yeah. That's why I foresee moving forward all strategies, all marketing strategies, through it should be executed and developed through the multicultural lens, because that's where the growth is coming.
Yes. And so it's so funny how things come around. My very first guest, no, not my first guest. I think she was like my second or third guest was my cousin who was a consultant in this space for 40 years, and she started in multicultural marketing.
There we go.
So again, this is not going anywhere. This is just going to continue to evolve and grow. And this is a place in a space that if you do not have someone on your marketing team or have a team within your marketing team that focuses on multicultural markets, you are missing out. And I think that this is going to be the next iteration of where this work goes. So,
Yeah.
Hernan, if people wanted to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, definitely. They can find me on hernantagliani.com. Also, they can visit my website, the agency, if they are interested in learning more what we do and how we can help the brands. Is taglianimulticultural.com. And also through social media. I know I share with you my different social media on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So, and also you can just go on Google, type my name, Hernan Tagliani. You're going to see a lot of content that I write for different national publications. And I'm excited to work and help brands to grow and educate them and set them up for success, because that's where, as we said before, that's where the growth is coming. We are a nation of immigrants, and we got to get into this wagon or it's going to be too late. Your competition will be the one who will be leading that category, and then it's going to be too late for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hernan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm hoping that people were able to, as I always say, walk away with a few nuggets that they didn't have before, right? So, folks, we are moving away from check boxes. We are doing things with intention. We are operating with um, long term goals and processes in place so that we do not miss out on these opportunities to reach these populations. So, Hernan, again, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode. I am really excited to continue these conversations. And until next time, have a good one. DEI After 5 is produced by the Leon Thomas Group. For more information, go to theleonthomasgroup.com.